Gail Gustafson. We work here in town. I'm a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist for about 23 years. And I'm also one of the volunteer physical therapists for U.S. Figure Skating. And I've been working for U.S. Figure Skating since 1998. So doing different roles. I travel with the team. So I've traveled I've done 4 continents, junior worlds, 4 world championships. And then I had the honor 2 years ago to be the physical therapist in Sochi at the Winter Olympics for our U.S. figure skating team. So that was much fun and that was exciting. I also own a physical therapy clinic here in town, Performance Physical Therapy. So we treat lots of injuries, including tons of skaters. So we are regularly treating skaters, trying to keep them on the ice. And another piece of what I like to do is injury prevention. So I do lots of talks. I've done tons of talks here at the World Arena and at different skating camps for injury prevention. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. And Gail, I've worked with Gail since 2007, and she's one of the most amazing movement analysts / Pilates instructors, but her main role is a certified movement analyst. But I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself.
So, I met Melinda in 2007 and worked at the clinic until just this last year where I moved into my own space. And as she said, we see a lot at the clinic, a lot of figure skaters. And so I am a movement analyst. It's not very well known in this country. It's more of a European degree. It's considered a PhD in movement, right? And so I observe not only athletes, but it could be somebody who just has had a chronic limp and work with them to try to meet whatever their goal is. I'm also a Pilates instructor, although I hate to use that word because I'm an old-fashioned Pilates instructor. I've been doing it since 1990, and I only work one-on-one. So I am a movement analyst who uses the Pilates equipment to work with my clients. Okay? And let's see, what else do I need to say? I see a lot of figure skaters. Over 85% of my clients are figure skaters. So I've been working with figure skaters for a long time. Both injured figure skaters and figure skaters who are trying to prevent injury and just keep going.
Yes. And Lori Fussell asked if we could do a presentation for you guys. And we thought that was a great idea because basically, one of the main reasons that skaters tend to get injured, maybe even a little more than other types of sports, is it's so one-directional. It's very, you spin a lot in the same direction, you jump the same way. And so if you don't really work a lot off ice on getting your body in balance, then I think that leads to injury, maybe a little more than some other types of sports where it's more balanced. Would you agree?
I think that's true. Absolutely true.
Yeah, so we're working with skaters who are like 8 years old to maybe 25, and we see tons of injuries. But as you guys know, the cumulative effect as we get older, then injuries can be even more likely with adult skaters when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So I thought it was a great idea to try to give you some of the same information that we give to the younger skaters to try to help you prevent injuries so you can keep skating and not end up having to have knee replacements, hip replacements, back surgeries down the road. So I'm going to turn this one over to Gail.
So we just put up a few points here, and the first point there is probably the most important. Now this can happen in any sport or activity where you compartmentalize how you think about your body. So you can't land your triple lutz and you say it's because of your left ankle, or it's because, oh yeah, I'm not getting that psoas engaged on the takeoff. And that is true, but it's better to think of your body as a bracelet full of a lot of beads. The bracelet's the most important part. All those little beads need to work together. Okay, so what we tend to see in figure skaters is they'll work on the one part. Like I have to get my psoas stronger because that's what my coach says I need to do. But they forget that if you're not landing your triple lutz, it has a lot to do with how your upper body is counterbalancing that, strength in your upper back, how your core is integrated with that hip, with the knee, with the ankle. so if there's only one thing you get from this, it's to start working with your body as a whole when you're off ice. Now it's, you're working with your body as a whole when you're on ice, but it's really good to have off ice work to do the same thing. So what's neat about working with Melinda, for instance, when we see a client who has an injury, like an ankle injury, Melinda can work specifically, and then they see me and I work how that is moving as their whole body is integrated. So I'm not only looking at their ankle, but I'm like, well, what's going on with your right shoulder that's causing that ankle problem? And can we fix that and see how that affects the ankle? So that's what we mean by looking at the whole body and looking at unseen causes of the injury. Yes, you hurt or fell, and your hip is now up and back and externally rotated, but why? Besides that it's one-sided, what else can I do off ice to bring myself back into balance? And it just requires a little shift of your mind. And if you can make that shift, you'll prevent injury, and when you are injured, you'll get better much more quickly. So that's what we mean by don't compartmentalize your body into unrelated parts. Dynamic balance and integration is a very important concept. As you know, it happens on the ice, right? Balance is about being in constant change and being able to have your mind and body involved in that, especially when you're running your programs. Okay? But it also has to do with how it's working inside, how everything is working together. And so finding things that you can do off ice that work on that. We're going to give you a bunch of examples that you can find from wherever you live. You can find something like this. And we've brought a bunch of examples that we'll try a little later. And then the next point, don't rely on your boot. It's kind of an odd thing to say, but what we've noticed working together is that skaters have really weak ankles and feet. And I was a dancer, and dancers have really strong ankles and feet. And so the contrast was shocking to me when I first started seeing skaters. And so what we've been doing with the high-level figure skaters that we see is really strengthening their ankles and feet and how that integrates into the hip. And we've been noticing that they're landing much more easily, would we say?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, their landing and takeoff is amazing, even though you're held by the boot, right? But still, because you have the strength underneath, it's made a huge, huge difference. And then the last thing, again, integrating whole body movements off ice for on ice ease. So an example was a few years ago, we had a skater who, she's a pair skater, and when she would be trying to land her throws, she would kind of fall out of the sky, sort of like a piano, and just like bam into the ice, and really be uneven, and was always throwing off that hip and that ankle and that shoulder on the opposite side, right? And so we worked not only on strengthening the hip and the ankle and that shoulder on the opposite side, but also teaching her how to reach through her lower body so she would land softly, okay? Which is working with the whole body off ice. So it was a concept, a shift in her mind, which strengthened her to be able to, even though she's falling from a great distance and spinning in the air, she can actually land, okay, very softly. And it's changed their programs completely.
Well, she rarely ever falls anymore on the throw.
Yeah,
That used to be a regular thing. She usually nails the throw.
Yeah. So, 2 points.
So I'm just going to talk about some common imbalances that we see, that I see as a physical therapist working with skaters, and Gail sees as a movement analyst. And so these may sound familiar to you, because they may be issues that you've dealt with. So like Gail was just saying, we see really, really weak ankles because you're in that boot all day long, 6 days a week perhaps. And so it's like being in a brace. So if you brace off a joint, the muscle will over time get weak. And unless you work on strengthening your ankles off ice, then they're going to be weak. And then you tend to gravitate towards a stiffer boot, tie it really tight. Especially as you go up in levels.
Right, as you go up in levels, exactly.
And you're starting to do harder jumps, and Then you want a zipper boot and tie it really tight. Yeah, duct tape it. Yeah,
I've seen it all.
Yeah. So a good example from a few years ago was Patrick Chan used to train here in Colorado Springs, and he used an Adea boot, which is a little more flexible. And his coach said you could almost fit your hand between the boot and his ankle, not literally, but because he worked really hard off ice on lots of stuff, and one of those was ankle skating. So he didn't need a stiff boot. He doesn't need to lace them super tight. He relies on his body. And he didn't really have, when he was here anyway, he didn't really have an injury. I never actually worked on that.
Yeah.
No, back then, I don't know if he's injured now, but he was super strong because he worked on it. Along with the weak ankle, we'll see a really restricted jammed ankle, more on the landing leg side of the attack. And it gets jammed because it's weak. So that's something I see a lot. But if your ankle is jammed, then it can't absorb shock forces, so that's got to go somewhere, and it goes to the knee and goes into the lower back. So if your ankles are stronger, your feet are integrating better, then you're not going to have that jammed ankle as much. It'll help you be more stable and you have a nice line.
What do you mean by jammed? Like it doesn't flex?
That's a good question. This is more of a physical therapy standpoint. So if I take an ankle, may I use your ankle? Or an ankle?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's probably just better to show you what I'm talking about. So I test joint play in whatever I'm working on, so I'll just take someone's ankle, and I should be able to take the joint and glide it. It should just glide. And that's really smooth. Yeah, it's a little stiff. That's not too bad. So she's got pretty good what we call joint play. It's just a little stiff. But the reason it gets locked up and doesn't move is because all the muscles around the joint have become really tight. And weak. But they're mostly because it's tight. And they're tight because they're weak and you're overusing them. Weak jam ankles, which leads to lots of injury. Another major thing we see with most skaters, even at the senior elite level, is really weak, deep hip muscles. So we're talking about the stabilizing muscles in your hip, your gluteus medius, not your big gluteus maximus, that's the power muscle. The deep stabilizing muscles are really weak. Where if somebody tries to, I'll show you a video here in a second, if we try to have somebody do a single leg squat, they can't keep that hip right underneath their skeleton. It just wants to collapse, and I'm exaggerating. It wants to collapse out to the side. So if that's happening, and you go to land your jump, that's just going to lead to hip injury, lower back injury, knee, big high knee. Let's see, we also, if somebody comes in to see me and I check if they're coming in with lower back pain, a really, really common pattern in the pelvis is for on the landing leg side, for the pelvis to be getting pulled out, what we call an out flare position. It's rotated back into a posterior rotation, and it's usually high on that side. And that's from a couple of things. It's because of muscle imbalances, it's because of those weak hip stabilizers, but also because of the repetitive nature of skating. You usually fall the same way. And certain muscles the same muscles tend to get tight. So it's those tight muscles, that's what's pulling you into that pattern, combined with core and hip weakness. And then the core knee kind of gets caught in the middle between what's going on in the restricted weak ankle and the weak tight hip. And that's when you'll start seeing knee pain. So if you've got a weak ankle, skaters also sometimes tend to pronate, or on the landing leg side because of the impact over time, especially if you started skating when you were little. Then those ligaments get stretched out over time. So it's really common to see pronated flat, floppy, unstable feet. So if your foot's going into pronation, you've got a weak hip that's not controlling, tracking from the top down, then the knee tends to collapse in. And then that stresses the inner knee joint and patellar region. And then up above, and Gail actually kind of helped me see this back before I met Gail in 2007, I wasn't thinking as much about scapular stabilizers except in the pair skaters, because the shoulders are. So maybe I'll let you touch on that.
Yeah, that's, we see that in all kinds of skaters, actually.
Right, that's what I mean, not just the pairs.
Yeah, not just pairs anymore.
Which muscles?
So, all the lats, the rhomboids, the
Lower
subscap, the lower trapezius. So, all the muscles that would hold your arms, right, and let you project, right? They're weak, and so you end up getting kind of tight bicep tendon and rotator cuff stuff because it hurts to hold your arms up there, right? Or jump with your arms above your head, same kind of thing. Shoulders up when you jump, when you're turning. Yeah, and it tends to be high on the landing side. I can't remember. Ooh, I've seen it. And this has to do with the next point, which is kind of an odd point to say, but there's something called an upper-lower split, or a body half split, or a diagonal split. It's how you train, right? So upper-lower split is really common in single skaters, right? You do a lot in your lower body, and your upper body's just, trying to, but you're not really training the strength the same, right? The lower body's getting a lot of power, and the upper body's just getting a lot of flow and control. So trying to get that in balance will prevent the split that we see with the weak scapula. So we've been working more with upper body stabilization. Again, it's helped with jumps, height in jumps, more correct alignment in jumps. Body half, I haven't seen a really bad skater with that yet, but diagonal split you definitely see because, again, you're almost always landing on the one side. So this diagonal is open, and opposite diagonal is kind of crunched in.
So solutions, what we try to encourage people to do is to work towards total body balance. So trying to work with getting stability in the whole system, increasing flexibility in the areas you're tight, and trying to balance out that split and the one-sidedness of skating. And I have seen skaters, one I'm thinking of in particular, who was a top-level skater, and I won't say what he's done, but because you know who it is. But he was actually purposefully training with his trainer off ice, only doing one-directional things, on purpose. And he became very injured, and that contributed to it. So they were doing things for working with triple combination jumps and quads, but only working that one side to get stronger, on the one side for these jumps. And he was totally out of balance. So,
yeah. And then there's another top-level skater who works off ice, doing everything on the other side, all the programs they run, not on the right, not on the side you're normally doing it on, right? So he's doing all of his turns and all of his jumps opposite. And he's amazing. He's doing it very, very well. So, again, balancing that out in your brain, because you're so used to going in that one direction, so try to work in the other direction. I work with a single skater. She just did really well in the last competition she was in. And we've been doing her short program backwards, okay, from the end to the beginning. And it's been great for her, to try to figure that out, and it's changed how her short program has. Yeah.
I mean, the entire program on the floor?
Yeah, we do it in the studio space, yeah, in reverse.
So what we would encourage you to do is, wherever you live, is to try to find people that help you with this. We'll give you some stuff to take home and work with yourself, but I'm going to be honest, it's going to be really, really hard to find a Gail, because she's really, really unusual. There aren't very many CMA, Certified Movement Analysts, in this country. So it's going to be difficult, but maybe not to find a movement analyst, or at least somebody who does Pilates and movement work and is maybe familiar with working with skaters.
Yeah.
And you can go onto the U.S. Figure Skating National Network if you're a member, And I'm a part of that committee to help to get people on the national network so that you can look up physical therapists and Pilates in your town when you're trying to find someone.
Okay, quick question regarding what you guys said as far as doing your skaters and athletes that you know that do things off the ice the opposite way to get muscle balance, right? Are there any like gym exercises or anything that, like for example, like not running through the program off the ice the opposite way or even on the ice the opposite way? The only thing that just raises a flag for me with that, being a skater, a lot of what we do is muscle memory. And I think, you know, when we rotate one way, we jump one way, we spin one way, it's so that the body can really get like automatically used to doing that when you're, you know, nervous and competing, for example.
Right.
You know, and I know, for example, I have students that, one of my students who's ambidextrous, she jumps one way and spins the other way, and she can actually do her jumps both ways, and I've told her, you're not gonna get, so you're only gonna get so far before you're gonna have to choose a way. And it's you know, it's one of those things that I've seen so many times with the skater that can do things both ways, they usually get to a point where they can't anymore. So do you find that with athletes? Do you find that they have trouble anywhere at all in their training because of that? I mean, I understand what you're saying as far as, you know, your muscles need to be worked both directions, which that makes perfect sense, but I couldn't imagine jumping the opposite direction, even off the ice.
Well, I don't think you have to take it to jumping the other way on the ice. I think it's just about working your body so that you're not don't have these imbalances.
Right.
But I see your point.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Yeah, because the minute you
Choose your
start,
direction at a certain
right, I
point.
mean, the
That's part of
minute you
sport.
start training an axle, for example, or any double jump the opposite direction, it's like, yeah, well, good luck doing it the way you can do it, because that typically is
And
what
some
happens.
skaters can. I'm thinking of, I know I'm pretty sure Rachel Flack could spin both directions, not
Yes.
jump maybe.
Yeah.
And if you can, Johnny Weir, I think can jump both directions.
Yeah, Michelle Kwan kind of made it a thing, you know, she would camel spin one way and then a camel spin the other way, but that
Yeah.
was it, like, you didn't really see her doing
So I think with the brain and the nervous system,
Yeah.
you could definitely train, people could do that.
Okay.
I think with the way the brain works.
Absolutely.
But it just takes more work.
Okay.
So, but I think working off ice, and what Gail really, but I think working off ice with what we're talking about wouldn't affect your muscle memory for your program.
On ice in
On
your program,
ice.
I don't think so. I think if anything, at least in the experience I've had working with people who work off ice, trying to figure it out, you know, backwards or whatever, suddenly it's easy on the ice.
Okay.
You know, it's easy. I mean, not easy, but a lot of the strain around the elements is gone
Okay.
because they work their brain in another way, and then it's refreshed, right? That's been my experience. I don't think it would happen for working off ice.
Well, I feel like if you work both sides, then you're preventing overusing the one side as well, and like strengthening across the board versus
Yeah.
like you were talking about, only practicing the one side.
And I think, again, what Melinda's stressing here, we're talking about how the brain learns, not so much about how the skater learns to do the element, because that's a whole other thing once you're on the ice, right? But how the brain learns, having that time for reintegration.
But very good question.
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah, I would recommend trying to do a double axel.
On the ice.
On the ice.
That's what I automatically think.
Unless you've worked a long, long time at getting proficient off ice, now your brain and body are fully integrated. Then it might not be a big deal for you at that point, but it would take a,
Yeah, not when you're learning double.
and not when you're learning anything.
Yeah.
So now we're just gonna go through just some examples of some things you can do on your own with just some simple equipment and some stuff without really needing equipment. So a lot of what we're talking about has to do a lot with balancing, because with balancing in certain ways and on different types of unstable devices, then you're kind of kicking in the stabilizing muscles around the joints. So it's working around the ankle, foot, knee, hip, and core all at once. So this little balance disc I just got off of Amazon. It was like $20. So some inexpensive equipment, and just challenging your body and your brain to work on being able to stabilize and balance, and I haven't played with this one much yet. Balancing on that, and then doing things, just simple things like even just doing slow controlled squats, trying not to let the board move. I mean, that's gonna, so that just kicks in your ankle stabilizing muscles, the stabilizing muscles of the knees and of your hips. And yeah, it's all about proprioception. It's all about proprioception. And then you can do a single leg squat. You can work on single leg squats, just being really stable. You can work on moving into a landing position. There's all kinds of things you can do with something like this. And then you can, I like to have people use lots of different types of unstable surfaces, again, for proprioception. So this is a lot harder almost than that, because it's really unstable. But
It's like standing on a half-inflated beach ball.
yeah, and doing those same things, it's a lot harder to do the same things.
Where did you get that?
Amazon.
Amazon, anywhere cheap, yeah. I've seen those at Target.
Yeah, on Target, yeah, sports stores. But so, and there's different brands. I don't think yeah. Gail has one called a Disco Sit that's a little thinner,
And it's inflatable.
and it's inflatable, so you can adjust how much air is in it. Because this is almost too much air for a single leg maneuver. And then these little rocker boards, and there's different brands. You don't want something that has too big of a thing. So,
Yeah, too big of a rocker, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. This is using a wall unit. This gal has, these are springs, very long springs that she's holding onto that are pretty lightweight and they move around. And she's working on her, basically, she's holding onto those and the surface she's on is also wobbly, right? It's a little unstable. So she's having to go from, take the skaters from this position, holding onto the springs throw off your weight because you're trying to stabilize and they're kind of moving all over the place. So she's going from here to here and then eventually opening, and she was just about ready to fall when we got that, okay? It's very difficult, but again, the whole body is working on that dynamic balance, right? Which you're doing on the ice, but great idea to do it off ice. So now, not everybody's going to go out and buy a pair of springs. They're not that expensive. They're only about $35 for a set. But you could use a TheraBand, which, did we learn a TheraBand? TheraBand is almost a little too stable compared to springs, but it would be worth a try. So you could put a TheraBand in a doorway, have it on one hand, and then, try to do that with a TheraBand in one hand. And it's going to move around a little bit. Or do that while you're on a wobble disc, right? So you're trying to move through it very slowly and articulately to find your balance. Now, of course, you're going to be stabilizing a little bit differently than you are in a skate boot, but it's enough that skating is not a problem.
So this is an exercise I give to all of my skaters and lots of other kinds of patients. And yeah, so I just take a piece of TheraBand and I tie a loop into it. So this doesn't cost too much. And then I tie a knot in the other end, and then you can just put it down low in the door and shut the door on it so it's in there. But Gail's going to do. And then you put this around one of your ankles. That's the exercises I'm working out, and I think this is a really good one for
It is a really good one.
for knee, ankles, knees, and hips and core. So get your balance on the other leg, and then make sure your hip isn't collapsing out to the side, that it's right underneath you. It's this way. So you want to make sure your hip is engaged, so you want to keep it right under your skeleton, and you don't want your knee locked out. Then you're just going to slowly pull back against the band, and you're focusing on keeping your balance. So this is working this side, not the one with the band on it. So this is just a light resistance to throw you off balance. It's a balance perturbation. And you can do this without the band, it's just easier. So you do 8 or 10 reps to the back. Then you turn, make a quarter turn, so this is the door. Get your balance again, make sure your hips underneath you. You can pull in your stomach muscles, tighten your core. Then take the band out of the way. And you want to move the band pretty slowly and not a very large movement. It's all about motor control. Balance. And you get the cord to turn this way. So each time you're facing a different way, it's working different muscles around my right foot, ankle, knee, and hip, and then the core. So it's engaging different muscles every time you're facing a different way. And I'm going to go just a little bit in front. That leg. And I usually do 8 or 10 reps. And then you switch legs and balance on your left side. And then once that gets easy, actually do it again.
Oh yeah, off the door.
Then I love this little thing for skaters because this mimics a skate blade. It's the same
Yeah, they're fine.
angle. So Amazon again, but a half foam roller. And then you balance on this thing. Once it gets easy for you to just do it balancing on the floor. This is a lot harder. Ooh, this is okay.
Yeah.
Make sure the hips engaged. So quite a bit harder. And then you just move the.
And that's the one that's on your handout, so you can remember it.
And then on the foam roller, you can also do these small things like a single leg squat while you're balancing. And try to keep that stable. And you can have somebody toss a ball to you while you balance. You can go into your spiral position, landing position. So use the little thing, it's about $8 or so. Yeah, so there's a lot you can do with that. And then another, I use this to test skaters' motor control, a little simple test, but it's also a good exercise. But so I'll have people do a single leg squat for me, and then I'm watching to see what does their foot and ankle do, what's their knee doing, is it collapsing in, is their hip, what's the quality of movement. And then you can do this as an exercise in front of a mirror so you can see yourself, and then just work on good knee tracking. You want your kneecap tracking right over your first and second toe. Make sure that hip's in. And just slow and controlled, you can do 8 or 10 of those. And that is a good exercise, and then you can work up to doing it on the half foot roller. But this is actually the video. That's a really poor single leg squat test. See how the knee collapses in, ankle collapses in, and the hip pitches out to the side because there's poor motor control over the hip, knee, and ankle. And Alexa actually is making it for me. Thank you. And now Alexa's going to do a good single leg squat test. So her knee is tracking right over her first and second toe, and her hip is right underneath her skeleton in good alignment, and her arch is not collapsing. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. This is a spinner disc, which is right here. It's kind of an interesting spinner disc. This is really expensive. It's a spinner disc that can just spin. You can have the cushioning on there that makes it wobbly, or without the cushion. And then you can take it off of there and it can spin and move around through the space. Okay? It's really insane. But people definitely do that. You order these online. They're called freeform boards, and they are very expensive. They're out of Australia. Right now, nobody's really using them for skating but us.
For any sport, and I mean, they're
Yeah, I mean, actually, the way they're used when you look at the videos online is weightlifters are using them for core strength. But we've been coming up with things for skaters, so she is working on her landing position. And if anybody wants to try this, you can actually come up here. It's a very sensitive spinner, which I'm not going to be able to demonstrate. Maybe I'll turn it this way. Always do so much.
Do you say also?
No. Not anymore.
They
Okay.
used to.
So we have skaters go through their landing without moving the spinner, right? While trying to stabilize it, which is making your entire hip and core have to work together. So again, whole body action, right? That's what she's working on there, and you can see the 3 phases of that. She's a beautiful young single skater. So this is kind of an expensive spinner. This is a spinner that you can get online, right? It's also a spinner. This happens to be a large one. They come in smaller sizes. I think they're about $25 or $35.
Well, the balance body one, the one I just bought for the clinic, was about 40. They
That's
have
what is a
balance
set.
body on
Right.
Amazon.
There's 2 of them in that set. Oh, if you order them online.
So that detaches.
Yeah, this, I'll show you an exercise on that in a second that we do. But, so this spinner is not as sensitive as ball bearings, but you can do the same thing. Again, you can work all of your positions. I have people use the TheraBand, and skaters use the TheraBand and work trying to keep this still. Okay? Yeah, it's pretty hard. Yeah, oh, and also doing this with, I have a few springs that you can do with the TheraBand. Oh, it's hard. Okay, so again, it's something to throw you off, and you have to keep working to rebalance so that you can use. And we work the non-dominant leg often. So we'll do A, the landing leg, and B, make sure they can do it on the other side. So that's a really fun exercise. Oh, this is the exercise, one of the exercises we do for hip strength and core strength when it's mobile. I'm just giving you an example. You can actually get something called, I think it's an ab board. Yeah, but they don't spin. They just have the wheels. So you can take this off. It's supposed to only be done on hardwood floor, but basically she's doing an exercise where you're in pointer position. Oh yeah, this is not going to do anything because it's on carpet. So normally this moves around really easily on a hardwood floor. So when you're on this position and having to move, this is hard to keep underneath you. And you're then going to add some abdominal work. So that's what she's showing. In the hard position, it's on a hardwood floor. And so it's actually moving all over the place. And just trying to keep it still, which strengthens that entire hip area that's down, as well as the hip that's reaching into space. And this is a Pilates reformer. If you ever found anybody who did Pilates in your area, you can, if they know how to work with skaters, or they can always email me. This is something we made up to work. This gal actually had an ankle tear, I believe it was. But when you started working that, once the ankle was getting stronger, I realized there was a hip strength problem and core strength problem. This reformer, if you've never seen one, this little part of the carriage moves in a gliding mechanism, and there's a spring that is attached to the carriage, which is attached by this rope to her foot. And what she's doing basically, and so the core stabilization is the thing is moving, and then she's taking her leg from the side in a rondation to the back, which is moving the whole carriage, which then she has to, again, work the standing leg, right? The standing leg. And when she first did that, she was way off to the side. Now she can actually do it. She's one of the only people who can do it. Yeah, so she's kind of quite along with this. But that's a fun thing. There's a lot of things you can do with the Pilates reformer if you have access to an instructor or access even to the home use reformers. You can do a lot for skating, actually. This is a Pilates chair adductor exercise that I just threw in there. It's a lot harder than it looks. There's a spring that she's standing on. It's very light. And her other foot is up about, a couple feet above that on the chair, and she has to squeeze the lower leg to the upper leg, and it helps with jumps, right? Cutting that leg in, okay? So, it's actually, when you start, the chair is about here, and then I try to lift it up a bit because her height it's too deep of a height for her height. So that's it. But you can see here she's rolling in. I don't know know if you noticed that. She's rolling in, which is a problem of hers on that knee. You see that? Her hips are really collapsed. And so this was the corrected position. I just put it in there. So she was actually kind of forward on that leg, which is very common for her. And she's a pair skater, and that's her landing side. And it's nasty, right? Causing her a lot of problems right now. So I'm teaching her how to really get that hip aligned there. This exercise for that. And it really works to close it so she can get her throws and things together.
And a few exercises for just targeting specific muscles that tend to be weak with skaters and those that require a lot of equipment, so just with a TheraBand. So this is a good one that actually Gail showed me a couple years ago for strengthening the hip rotators and the glute medius too. So, yeah.
Show you on the
see.
floor.
Thanks. So you'll put this band around your ankles. Just a loop. And then you can start with one set of 8 or 10 where you're just trying to go out a little bit with both legs. And you focus on trying to put equal pressure, because one leg is going to usually be weaker than the other, so you're going to want to dominate with the stronger leg. So try to make them even. Then, for your next set of 8, you're going to keep one leg, so she'll keep her left leg stationary. She's going to try to not let it move as she slowly moves the right leg out of the way. So that's working the right hip rotator some, but it's really engaging the left stabilizer. So that's a really good one.
Oh, that's hard.
Yes. It's a red band. And then you keep the right leg stable and move the left one out in the way. So about 8 reps of each one is plenty.
Great. So how about that?
And then you put the band up above your knees. Now you'll turn on your sides.
You do a clamshell.
Yeah, and then you can do a clamshell. And this also works your glutes medius rotators. And do 8 or 10 reps on each leg, full sets of 8 or 10. So that's more of a segmentalized, isolated exercise, but very useful for those two for strengthening the hip muscles. And then we were talking earlier about the foot strengthening. The skaters also have weak feet and they don't have good proprioception really anymore.
Yeah.
Being walking that Invisalign.
Yeah.
So you could
This exercise, yeah, it's really, it's a little light. You put the TheraBand around your toes, actually. Take my shoes off again. Should have wore slip-on shoes. You point your toes. You actually want the TheraBand to be a little tighter than it is. And it supposedly goes around your toes. Like that. And then all I'm going to do is keep my lower leg stable and open my feet away from each other, like I'm fanning my toes.
So she's spreading her toes open too. She's not just moving her ankles.
So it's this whole side of your body that gets strong. So this tends to be tight on skaters rather than strong, right? It's a really simple little thing to have in your bag. That's really hard. That's eventually, once a skater, some of our top skaters, I have to just make up stuff for them at a certain point. So that's a skater working her landing. So she's on the spinner on releve or on the ball of her foot, and she's trying to come down and land without moving the spinner. Yeah, and that she actually can do it. She's the only person who can do that. But this one day where I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with you? I've tried everything. Nothing's hard. So we started working on that. That's hard. But it's, again, you wouldn't need this sensitive a spinner. You can have a small spinner just working that, or even the little tiny mini spinners that you actually spin on, the ones that are just under the ball of your foot. I was trying that last week. They're from Japan.
Oh,
See those little ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really fun. You can really spin. But trying to get on it, on the ball of your foot, and then lower your foot down without letting it spin, ooh, that was really difficult work, so.
So we definitely encourage you to try to find some providers in your area that are familiar, hopefully familiar with figure skating. And again, you can get on the national network. But so a good physical therapist for treating injuries, and also somebody that can work with your whole body. And we've got feel free to email us. Our emails are on that handout. If you didn't get a handout, there's one here. But do you guys have any questions?
So my ankles, knees, and hips pop a lot, especially in the morning. Is that like something that could eventually lead to injury, or is that more like a joint thing?
Well, we'll probably have to assess you further, but it's,
Right.
but a typical reason the joint is hot is because the muscle tendons around that joint are so tight, so they cause resistance forces. And so that's one reason it's really hot. The pop noise is just air escaping from the joint, gases. But the reason it's popping is often because it's so tight.
So these exercises
Might, yeah, over time. Yeah.
So, I'll try to be general, but personally, for me, one of the hardest things going from a panel spin into a sit spin, because my back, because of an old injury, just doesn't like to shift from that nice extended arch position into that curl. Do you have any suggestions for exercises to try to improve that transition? Because that is painful, for one of a better word. Background for a major medical injury, so I know it'll never be great, but I think that's a big weakness for a lot of us probably.
Yeah. I would guess some of it is weak core, weak psoas muscles from your injury and the weak hip muscles. So I think working with some of these exercises over time, I think you'll improve.
Okay.
And then you may have a lot of tissue restriction in the fascia and the muscle tissue, vertebrae because of your injury. So that could be worked with somebody who does hands-on manual therapy. But I think working with this kind of work to get the whole body integrated and stronger and moving better probably make that transition easier.
Really basic from yoga, where you're in an extended position and then you're rolling from your pelvis into a arch and then back. But then there's some variations on that. You side bend and do that. You twist. Okay, so I twist and do that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm moving my spine in a lot of different ways, but still doing that head-tail action.
Thank you.
Again, not forcing. None of that would be forcing. It would be just getting used to that transition. Okay, something like that might help free up, especially if it is fascial tightness from a old injury.
What about a
Superman.
Well, it's just laying prone and then lifting up your arms and lift your arms. It's kind of body movement.
This is
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just lifting up here with the upper back.
I saw that more as a transitional from the curve to the straight. Is that right?
It's the arch to the
Yeah.
curl that kills.
This to me would be more like if you had a really hard time in getting and grabbing your skate blade. That I think would be, or I teach for people for Bielman. I'm teaching right now a lot of things that are,
in a sphinx position to lift.
or, which I can't do very well, but you get the idea. But then you have to have your core really engaged in order to do that and not just ovaries muscles.
Any other exercises for Gail?
Yes. There's a bunch on the ball, on a therapy ball. There's a bunch on a therapy ball. The main thing with Bielman that I try, especially probably for an adult skater too, but when I see that movement, it's all happening in like 3 or 4 vertebrae, the lower back, major injury, problem.
Yeah,
So,
L3.
yeah.
Your lumbar
L3,
really get
yeah.
cramped and get
Yikes.
pushed forward almost. Like
Yeah.
if you look online and pull up pictures of Gilman. Look at people's lower backs. If they're healthy and they have good core control and the flexibility to do that safely, and especially the psoas muscle, because the psoas, you guys heard of the psoas? I mean, so it's a hip, part of it's a hip flexor, the iliacus, but the psoas portion of your hip flexor goes from your hip and it attaches into the front of the lumbar spine. So it attaches into the front of the vertebrae, if I'm a vertebrae. And if that's tight and or weak or both, and you go to do your Bielman, so that attaches to L3, then what you'll see in those pictures, in most people in a Bielman, there's going to be a, like what we call a V. There's a V, and it should be, if you're safe doing a Bielman, it should be a nice smooth,
It should be an
arc.
arc.
If you see a V, then L3 is getting sheared forward on L4.
Not a good thing.
That's not, it creates what's called a spondylolisthesis and ankylosthesis, disc stress, and so that's pretty.
So you want to do things that try to work more of the vertebra. So anything you can find. Yeah, or, you know, Feldenkrais works, I don't know if you know the Feldenkrais method, it's classes and hands-on method that they work so that you get very articulate in all your vertebra, and that's just a thought. More Feldenkrais teachers than there are analysts.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, and feel free to email us if you have any bigger questions later. Any help with resources.
Thank you.
Thank you.